Good evening, and thank you for coming. I'm Martin McCaffrey, director of the Capri Theatre, and thank you all for coming out tonight. Make sure you're in the right place. You're seeing Soylent Green, not A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night, which you should all come see tomorrow because there's more people here right now than we've had all weekend. So we would really appreciate, and Thunderball on Thursday, so just plan to be here for the week. Anyway, this is our first foray into a Science on Screen grant that we got from the Coolidge Theater up in Massachusetts. And tonight is National Science on Screen Night, so there are theaters all across the country participating in this, showing films and then finding a scientific hook for them. We found ours, and if you don't know about it yet, you'll know soon enough. So we'll have, the next one will be coming up in April 29th. It'll be Grizzly Man, with introduction by Mr. Man from the museum, not the museum, the zoo, and that one should be interesting. It's you'll see a theme developing among the films, I think, but if you're familiar with Grizzly Man. Anyway, I'd like to get you all to turn off the cell phones, leave them off. Yes, we can see you when, no matter how hard you tried to hide that bright flashing light, we can see you. Please don't do that. Our film tonight is introduced by Dr. Maureen Murphy. She is from Huntingdon. She's a professor and chair of the Department of Chemistry and Biochemistry. She earned her PhD in chemistry and biochemistry at the University of South Carolina and completed postdoctoral fellowship in organometallic chemistry at the University of Chicago before becoming an academic. So her topic tonight, in case you don't know, is the nutritional value of people, which I'm sure you've all wanted to know for quite some time. So we can answer questions after the speech, and if after the movie, she'll be around to answer any more questions you might have developed about, how best to procure a meal. Thank you again for coming, and Dr. Murphy.
Well, thank you very much for the invitation to be the opening speaker for this National Evening of Science on Screen tonight. When Martin first called me, he said, "Do you have a movie in mind?" I said, "Soylent Green," and he went, "Oh my gosh, it's the night before St. Patrick's Day in green. I got a special dress, so I'm very excited to be here." It's exciting to know that all over the United States tonight, there are geeks and nerds like me, spouses, partners, children, students, maybe some pets gathered to watch movies such as the 1973 version of Soylent Green. In fact, it was a number of years ago, many years ago, when I saw my first science-related movie here at the Capri. In fact, it was my first date. I had my first date when I was 18 here. And my first date was with Jeffrey A. Stevens, who was also a chemistry major at Huntingdon. And we saw the movie The Fly with Jeff Goldblum here. Although not a romantic experience for me, I was later reminded by Jeff when I was walking around University of Chicago as a postdoc. I look across the sidewalk at the physics department, and there's Jeff Stevens from Huntingdon. And I was reminded by Jeff there at Chicago that after seeing The Fly with me, he was sure that we were destined to be married. So he left Chicago to work for the International Atomic Energy Association in Vienna, Austria. And I left Chicago to be one of the first female chemistry professors at University of Alabama in Tuscaloosa. So I'm so thankful to the Capri Theatre for initiating my interest in science on screen, as well as my interest in boys. It started here. Tonight we're gathered here in this beautiful historic theater to watch the movie Soylent Green. If you have not seen the movie, and there's some of my students out there I know who have not seen the movie, I will not spoil it for you. Suffice it to say, the ending of Soylent Green will leave you with a sentence that you will use forever. I use it in class, but only in the advanced courses. So before we watch the movie tonight, I would like for you to consider this question. What is the nutritional value of a human? No, not what is the nutritional value of what we should eat every day. I mean, is there nutritional value in eating a human, or better yet, let's think about that high protein diet that you've never ever considered. As a scientist who specializes in the role of metals in biological systems, I'm innately curious about the nutritional value of all parts of the body. It turns out that your toenails contain a pretty significant amount of metal ions. So if you're low on iron, magnesium, or copper in your body, no need for vitamins. Munch on a few toenails from someone else, preferably a welder. Why? In 2014, some of our research from Huntingdon appeared in the Journal of Occupational Health and Hygiene. In our study, we took humans exposed to metals and sought to determine a correlation between toenail metal concentration and prior 2-month work activity in welders. So we had 48 welders recruited through a local union in Mobile, and they provided 69 sets of toenail clippings. Union supplied and worker verified personal work histories were used to quantify the hours welded and respirator use. Toenail samples were digested with acid, and they were analyzed for lead, magnesium, cadmium, nickel, iron, and arsenic using some fancy instrumentation. The highest concentrations were found for nickel, followed by manganese, lead, iron, arsenic, and cadmium. All the metals were correlated with one another, and we found that manganese was associated with weld hours 7 to 9 months prior to clipping. Results suggested that manganese, lead, iron, and cadmium may have particular windows of relevant exposure that reflect work activity. In a population with variable exposure, toenails may serve as a marker for metal fume exposures to various metals. Well, if exocannibalism is your style, and exocannibalism is where you seek people outside your group. I counted 57 people here, so we're a group. So if we practice exocannibalism, we'd go outside this theater and choose people to eat. I think you would want to particularly eat a welder if your metal ion concentration was low, although everything has its pluses and minuses. You're going to get the iron and calcium, but then you're going to get the lead and cadmium as well. It turns out that children and humans in rural areas have higher concentrations of iron, zinc, and calcium in their nails. In 2013, there was a study done in Ethiopia that determined the levels of lead, cadmium, zinc, calcium, and iron in the toenails and fingernails of children under the age of 6 years in urban and rural areas in Kenya. The lead levels range from 8 to 49 micrograms per gram in the fingernails, but the important thing in this study was that the iron and zinc levels in these children were significantly higher in rural areas than those children in the urban areas. The levels of all the metal studies were higher in the toenails except for the iron and calcium, where the levels were higher in fingernails. These results indicated that either the toenails or fingernails could be used as a reference for levels of metals due to environmental exposure. Vitamin C deficient cultures might consider eating humans from tropical islands, where consumptions of fruits and vegetables are high. That's because we humans are one of 3 mammals whose livers do not manufacture vitamin C. This means we have to get vitamin C from external sources, such as fruits and vegetables, dietary supplements, or humans. Our ancestors, though, usually found better sources of food. But what if we, as humans, exhaust our sources of protein and food on this earth due to some calamity? What or who would we turn to for nutrition for the survival of our species? In December of 2000, Louis F. Petrinovich wrote an excellent book that you should get and read called The Cannibal Within. In this book, Petrinovich offers an evolutionary account of the propensity of human beings in extreme circumstances to eat each other. This is despite the Western taboo against such practices. Now, what sets Petrinovich's work apart from the large body of literature on cannibalism, if you search at the internet, you see sensational, nonsensical, and either anthropology-related studies about cannibalism, but Petrinovich's work is very different from this because he studied cannibalism through history. And his underlying premise was that cannibalism as an alternative to starvation is condoned by the same biological morality that would condemn cannibalism of other sorts in non-threatening situations. Deep as the taboos may be, the survival instinct runs even deeper. The author believes that cannibalism is not a pathology that erupts in psychotic individuals, but it's a universal adaptive strategy that's evolutionarily sound. The cannibal is within all of us, he says, and cannibals are within all cultures, should the circumstances demand cannibalism's appearance and usage. The major instances in which starvation cannibalism occur, which includes shipwrecks, plane crashes, Arctic exploration parties, major famines, concentration camps, and gulags, should convince us that there's a consistent pattern and a uniform regularity of order in which different kinds of individuals are consumed. In considering who eats whom, when, and under what circumstances, this regularity appears, and it's consistent with what would be expected on the basis of Darwinian theory. In short, starvation cannibalism is not a manifestation of behavior of individuals who are driven to madness, but reveals something underlying characteristic of evolved human beings. Now, I'm particularly interested in the cascade of events in tonight's film, Soylent Green, that leads to the concept and mass production of Soylent Green. I hope that you're interested in this as well. No scientific survey of human origins is complete without confronting the yucky fact that occasionally, yes, we used to eat each other, even here in Alabama. Well, why did we used to eat each other? In 2006, James Cole, an archaeologist at the University of Brighton in England, published his dissertation on the topic of prehistoric cannibalism, an act of nutritional necessity or a result of sociocultural conditions. His dissertation research was just like it sounds. He wanted to know whether early humans ate each other for cultural or religious reasons or just because they were hungry. A search of the existing literature in 2006 showed that there was little research done in this area. What he found was that there was a balance of people eating each other for nutritional reasons and for socio-cultural conditions as well. Cultures used to eat people and still do today. There are cultures in New Zealand, Africa, Papua New Guinea, and Micronesia which still practice cannibalism. A 2013 document acquired by the United States government reported that cannibalism was occurring in North Korea due to the shortage of food. The president of the country, Kim Jong-un, criticized some North Koreans for practicing cannibalism and ordered them to stop the practice. So in times of severe food shortages, such as during wars, prisoner of war situations, long and epic journeys to faraway places, cannibalism for survival was practiced. What then is the caloric content of a human? Actually, people have conducted this research. The first research was done in 1970 by a pair of anthropologists who counted and measured the calories in a small man. 110 pounds, or for you Europeans and scientists, about 50 kilograms, with a muscle mass of about 66 pounds. The 66 pounds of muscle mass computes to about 18,000 calories worth of food, enough to feed 60 people 3,000 calories for one day. Now, I have a visual for you. I asked my students, where can I get a blow-up doll? And they said, and they looked at me, they said, Dr. Murphy, there's a store called like Love and Stuff or something. They said, but really, don't bring this to the Capri because you're going to have to put a bathing suit on it or something. I said, well, are there anatomically correct parts? They said, yeah, sometimes there. So I got this on eBay, and it suffices as a model. And what they found in 1970 was the heart is worth 722 calories. Now, I looked online. There's a new diet called the 722 calorie diet. And I said, oh, wow, is people eating hearts? No, it's just you're eating greens and stuff like that. So this is kind of a magical number. Now, how do you measure that? We do experiments in chemistry called calorimetry. We can chop up peanuts and put them in a calorimeter, combust them. The device is surrounded by water, and as we combust that food or peanut, the water around it, we measure the temperature increase, and from that we can get the calories. So the heart, 722 calories. The thighs, now remember these are men, not women, 10,707 calories per thigh. Skin, let's see, 8,294 calories, where they actually removed the skin from this person was already dead, right? And measured the caloric content. Adipose tissue, that subcutaneous tissue beneath your skin and everything, 40,000 calories from the person was due to adipose tissue. All total, if you eat this grown man, 10 pounds, you would have consumed 81,472 calories. Now, I looked up what that's equivalent to. So in chemistry, we're interested in what it's equivalent to. I didn't do the backside, but I'll tell you about that later. This 81,472 calories for consumption of a small man is equivalent to 160 Big Macs, 350 Panera Blueberry Muffins, and more than 50 pounds of Dreamland barbecue ribs. The only research on the nutritional value of humans is focused on the nutritional value of a man. And I was thinking, would you expect the nutritional value of a woman to be any different? I would. As a chemist, I know that women secrete more sulfuric acid from their underarms and in their tears than men. And you know that too if you watch commercials for deodorant. They'll say, strong enough for a man, but made for a woman. Deodorants are formulated differently because women are more acidic than men. So I think research on the caloric content of women versus men would show some really interesting differences that might prove to be useful to somebody, somewhere. Humans do not pack the same caloric content as a bear or a 16-point deer. So a group would have to eat at least 3 humans at a time to make it worth their while. Slaughtering your own, though, leads to its own problems. It leads to loss of your group. So eventually the group must practice exocannibalism, which we've referred to before, eating people outside your group. But what does the law say about cannibalism? The case of R versus Dudley and Stevens in 1884 is the first case which mentions cannibalism. This is an English case which dealt with 4 crew members of an English yacht. And the name of the yacht was the Mignonette, like filet mignon. These people, 4, were cast away on a storm some 16,000 miles from the Cape of Good Hope. After several days, one of the crew, a 17-year-old cabin boy, fell unconscious due to the combination of famine and he was drinking seawater. The others, one possibly objecting, decided then to kill him and eat him. They were picked up 4 days later. 2 of the 3 survivors were found guilty of murder. A significant outcome of this case was that necessity was determined to be no defense against the charge of murder. And you think, well, why didn't they just wait, until the boy died? But they didn't. So 2 people went to jail, but that was for murder, not for the cannibalism. Turns out we must look to the millennial generation, those youngsters, including my children, born between 1983 and 2000, to guide us in alternative forms of protein for our future nutrition. The millennials are the future. They're the ones who will be spending our money and, perhaps eating us. How comforting it would be to know that our attorney daughter and teacher son would argue over who gets to pull the wishbone from the barbecued breast of mom. Almost 1/3 of millennials consume 1 or more meat alternatives every day, and about 70% of millennials eat meat alternatives a few times a week, even though only 13% of millennials are vegetarian or vegans. The size and spending power of this group, born between 1983 and 2000, has been rising. But the tenet that protein is a cornerstone of a healthy diet, that it helps us feel full and satisfied, still remains constant. Our Earth is changing. The United Nations reported in January 2015 that animal proteins are not sustainable. 33% of global arable land is used to grow animal feed. 26% of Earth's terrestrial surface is used for grazing. 15% of global greenhouse gas emissions come from animal agriculture. To produce 1 pound of animal protein, 10 pounds of plant protein are needed. Compared to 2011 levels, the estimated global growth in demand by 2050 for meat and eggs is 58%, and for dairy is expected to be 73%. The average annual protein intake for a U.S. male more than 20 years old is 99 grams per day, about 1/4 pound, 68 grams a day for females older than 20 years old. In 2012, we each ate, on average, 134 pounds of meat, poultry, and fish, and 264 pounds of dairy. Well, there's much research now focused upon the development of plant proteins to replace the animal protein in our diets. In fact, the cover of the recent Chemical and Engineering News in February, and I'll have to show you this, has on it something called the vegetable solution. Why we're outsourcing proteins from plants. Very, very pertinent to what we're talking today. According to the United Nations, 805 million people, or 1 in 9 persons on our planet, suffer from hunger. As the global population grows to 9 or 10 billion by 2015 and incomes rise, demand for food from animal agriculture is expected to double. That kind of increase threatens to overwhelm the Earth's land, water, and energy resources. In addition, raising animals for food releases a lot of greenhouse gas. The trick then is to get us to switch to plant proteins like those found in soy. In fact, soy is the only common plant protein that contains sufficient quantities of all the essential amino acids to ensure a proper diet. People who eat only plants may not get enough of one essential amino acid, lysine, but eating a steady diet that includes legumes would correct that. Soyazyme is a multi-million-dollar company currently researching and testing various formulations of soy to look and taste like chicken, pork, and beef. I looked up the company, and it's associated with Procter & Gamble, which gave me a job offer in 1983, and I turned down because it was in the soap division and I couldn't get creative about soap. And Soyazyme is doing some test marketing studies, and I love to do those. I did those when I was in grad school at Chicago for Procter & Gamble, and they send you peanut butter cranberry muffins and you try them out. So the newest product they're working on, no joke, I can't believe it's not barbecue. It's a tub of soy-based protein that's cut to look like shredded pork meat. It smells like shredded pork meat. It has barbecue sauce on it. So that's their newest product. I can't believe it's not barbecue. So as we watch the movie Soylent Green tonight, it becomes even more important to consider the scientific issues raised in the movie and realize that now soy is, in the plant form, in. If we continue to consume as much animal protein as we do today, there will be a lot of struggles to recapture resources. The challenge now is for scientists to make plant and soy protein more attractive to consumers, varying the texture, color, and shape. Soy protein may be the protein of the future, the protein of 2020 on our Earth. So as we end this silly talk here today, I'd like to thank you for your attention and move forward now to the year 2020 with the world ravaged by the greenhouse effect and overpopulation in the movie. And we're all going to say, people never change. They'll do anything to get what they need, and they need Soylent Green. Thank you very much.